We ain't playing games no more. We taking back what is rightfully ours.
Hebrews to Negroes, wake up black America. Judah, it's time to go.
Please like, share, and subscribe. Shalom.
What's up, Ron Dalton Jr.? Oh, you think the real Jews wouldn't respond to your phony fake claims? It's time to eat through your entire presentation. With an unbroken chain of history preserving our holy text, you wouldn't even have a Bible without us. I will debunk you.
This is a response to the lying Ron Dalton Jr. We're going to do 9 points, 9 major points, 9 major lies that he says. We're going to debunk them one by one. Point number 1. Dalton the Dingbat seems to be under the impression that Jews believe the ancient Israelites were all white. This is a typical straw man argument that this clown always says all the time on all his broadcasts when he's speaking about the real Jews. He knows he has to misrepresent our position because he can't deal with the actual facts. Nobody with a brain denies there were black Jews in the past that were converted to real Israel. For example, we have the black Lemba Jews, who I know very well from Africa, as well as the Ethiopian Jews, who we're all close to. I'm very close to them. They do not claim to be the originals. Jews come in every skin complexion. That's the real truth. However, the original Israelites were not a black people group as a whole. They were not. There's no evidence on that subject whatsoever. Rather, they were essentially a light brown people group, just as modern Bedouin Arabs are, or modern Yemenite Jews, or Samaritan Israelites, those of which who never left the land of Israel. They've been there for over 3,000 years. So they saw who left and who came back. They are actual Israelites. What most of these fake black Hebrew Israelites don't understand is that it is logically impossible for a people to be scattered throughout the world for 2,000 years and then have them all come back essentially looking the same. This is impossible. They are going to look like all the nations due to the inevitable mixing. This is common sense, which is something that is severely lacking with this movement. So here's the thing. Why is Dalton the Dingbat claiming that there are no European-looking Jews, when in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 62 through 64, it clearly says the Jews would be scattered to the 4 corners of the earth, and that they would be few in numbers. Now, blacks all across this earth are about 1 billion. 1 billion. Whereas real Jews throughout history until today have always been between 11 to 14 million Jews. Huge gap difference. Few in number. The real Jews are few in number. Again, those who are of the dark complexion are 1 billion. All right. This also, by the way, contradicts the African dysphoria, which they always talk about. Common sense tells you that there would have been European-looking Jews if they were also exiled amongst Europeans for 2,000 years. This is common sense. But again, we're not dealing with common sense here. Furthermore, the ancient Israelite historian Josephus openly states in Antiquities of the Jews that there was already an entire tribe of Israel in Europe. In Europe. In Europe. During his time. It's obvious that the fake black Hebrew Israelites simply want to exclude any European-looking people as Jews because they are black supremacists. They hate white people. Openly. Not only does the ancient Israelite historian Josephus openly state there was an entire tribe of Israel in Europe, again, in Europe, he lists where all the 12 tribes were and where they were known to be after the 70 AD destruction. I repeat, after the 70 AD year destruction of Jerusalem. Newsflash. He never says a word about them going to sub-Saharan Africa. Not one word. No historian says that. But yet they claim this. One of their long list of fake claims. Here's the exact quote from Josephus in Antiquities of the Jews, chapter 11. There are 2 tribes in Asia and Europe. I repeat, Asia and Europe, subject to the Romans, while until now there have been 10 tribes beyond the Euphrates. What does this mean? The tribes of Israel were primarily scattered throughout Europe and Asia. Notice that Josephus is writing in Rome and that the Euphrates is in Iraq. So when he says beyond the Euphrates, he means throughout Asia, east and north of Iraq. He doesn't say a word, once again, about sub-Saharan Africa or West Africa, not one word. So who are we going to believe? An actual ancient Israelite historian who went through the 70 AD destruction, or some fringe nutball YouTuber named Ron Dalton Jr.? I'll let you answer that. Point number 2. Dalton the dingbat and his gullible zombies claim that European Jews cannot be real Jews because they are known as Ashkenazi. You hear this all the time because they're not educated on the exile of real Jews. So this is what they go to all the time. Very convenient. Which is a name from the line of Japheth, which they're trying to promote, by the way. This is a perfect example of the utter ignorance and limited education biblically of this fringe movement. Again, Ashkenazi is German. It means Germany. In other words, they were given that title in exile because they settled in that region during exile. Just like Mizrahi Jews are given a Hamitic title because they settled in Egypt. Mizrahi comes from the Hebrew word for Egypt, which is Mitzrayim. And yet nobody, not even them, are trying to claim that Mizrahi Jews are the ancient Egyptians. But they do it with the Ashkenazi because, again, this is a game. This is a game that's being played with our scripture, with actual history. What more can I say? Point number 3. Dalton the dingbat and his entire case is built on non-stop straw man arguments. Another example of this is his absurd notion that we are claiming the ancient Egyptians were white. Here we go again. That's all they see is black and white. Because again, that's what they're doing. Nobody with a brain is claiming ancient Egyptians were a white group. No one. Not us, not no one. The point is, they generically looked exactly like modern Egyptians. The rest of the world understands this, but not them. It's essentially only black supremacist nutballs like Ron Dalton Jr. who do not know this. Newsflash, the largest DNA study ever done on ancient Egyptians showed that the ancient Egyptians had less sub-Saharan African blood than modern Coptic Egyptians. What does that tell you? Point number 4. Dalton the dingbat claims that the Canaanites were black as well, and yet, just like the largest DNA study ever done on ancient Egyptians, DNA debunks his lies again. DNA extracted from 4,000-year-old specimens from ancient Canaan shows that they share 90% of their DNA with modern Lebanese people. All of the things that are being claimed in this video, all the historical proof, will be in the description box and the comment section. So I'm going to post them below. So, again, they would know this if they studied and actually knew the facts. But again, it's always fake claims, fake facts. Point number 6. They always claim that Israel is hot and it's like Africa, blah, blah, blah. You heard all before. Not knowing, again, because they're not educated, they've never been there, not knowing that the temperature, the climate of Israel is always 70 degrees almost year-round. It's a Mediterranean climate. It is not sub-Saharan climate whatsoever. Okay, now we're going to talk about, with this point, skin tones here. The only comeback that the fake black Hebrew Israelites got for this one is their goofy Eskimos are brown line, which only shows how ridiculous their claims are. What they don't seem to understand is that coastal peoples are more likely to have seafood-based diets that are high in vitamin D, which means they don't need lighter skin. Again, I will put the studies below so you can look at this for yourselves. They don't understand common understanding of how this works. Every organism has the God-given ability to gradually modify their external features in order to better adapt to their given environment. That's why darker skin is generally found in sunnier regions, while lighter skin is generally found in less sunnier regions. No sane person can look at the indigenous skin color map and deny there is a clear pattern. Only a black supremacist nutball like Ron Dalton Jr. would deny this, and he does. Again, I'll put the links below. The fake black Hebrew Israelites simply have no options but to deny the obvious facts that are contrary to their claims and stronger than their fake claims. They have to obviously deny the obvious correlation between the general complexion of population groups and climate. Why? Because the entire land of Israel, once again, is a Mediterranean climate, not sub-Saharan climate. That's why it's not always hot there. It's not hot at all. All right, point number 6. Point number 6, another fake claim of their list. Dalton the Dingbat and many of their gullible followers like to point out another fake claim that Israel has the highest rates of skin cancer. Here's the part they conveniently leave out. Israel has the 6th lowest rates of deaths from all cancers. You want to talk about skin cancer, there's all kinds of groups, including Black Americans who suffer from skin cancer as well. Does that mean that there's something wrong with their skin tone? Of course not. Again, they won't say this because it doesn't fit their narrative. So it's another one of their fake claims again. It's true that Israel does have a high rate of getting cancer. And again, Israel is full of skin complexions of all kinds, from very light to light brown to dark to darker. Again, we have the Ethiopian Jews who are very dark. The skin rate, the skin cancer is for them too. But again, the death is 6th lowest, which they ignore, of course. All right. Here's the real kicker. The fact that Russian Jews make up a large portion of the Jews in Israel today, which is what they try to point out, proves in itself that they are the real Jews. Why is this? Because Jeremiah chapter 3 verse 18 openly states that a large portion of Jews would return to the reborn nation of Israel from the land of the north. It reads as follows. This is Jeremiah chapter 3 verse 18. In those days the house of Judah shall walk with the house of Israel. They shall come together out of the land of the north to the land that I have given for an inheritance unto their fathers. Newsflash. The farthest northern nation that is directly north of Israel is Russia. So it's just a coincidence to them that the largest immigration of Jews returning back to Israel is from the very land that is directly north of Israel, which is Russia. Really? A coincidence? Notice also that we know Jeremiah chapter 3 verse 18 is dealing with the large portion of the Jews by virtue of the fact that it refers to them as the house of Israel, meaning many. Recall also how the ancient Israelite historian Josephus records that a majority of the 12 tribes were throughout Europe and Asia, like I mentioned before. One of the excuses the fake black Hebrew Israelites tried to make for why the Jews in the land today can't be the real Jews is because many of the Jews there are blaspheming the name of God and committing sins as if their nation isn't, which is hilarious, by the way. This just shows their ignorance of biblical prophecy. In Ezekiel chapter 39, verses 1 through 7, we read about the end-time battle of the nations coming against the reborn nation of Israel. This passage proves that the Jews will still be profaning the name of God in the land. Look at verses 6 through 7. And I will send a fire in Magog, and among them that dwell carelessly in the isles, and they shall know that I am Yehovah. So will I make my holy name known in the midst of my people Israel, and I will not let them pollute my holy name anymore. This is in Ezekiel chapter 39, verses 6 through 7. You see that? Notice that this is stated after the Jews have returned to the land and after the end-time assault against real Israel. Hence, this shows that the Jews will still be profaning the holy name of God and others in the land, which debunks one of many of their fake lies that they say all the time, that the Jews are supposed to be completely sinless when they come back to the land. Furthermore, Zechariah chapter 14 openly states that the Jews would be settled in Jerusalem in the last days before the end-time assault of all the nations coming against Jerusalem. This is biblical prophecy all over the scriptures. because they don't study scripture. They only study sound bites. What's convenient. This is another proof that the Jews in the land are the real Jews. Point number 7. One of the claims that Dalton the Dingbat makes is that European Jews do not carry any Hamitic DNA, which means they can't be Jews, which is another lie. Since the Jews lived in Egypt for 400 years and amongst the Canaanites for 2,000 years, again, they assume that the Egyptians were black and the Canaanites, which is totally bunk. This is an outright lie. The ancient Levant haplogroups are J and E1b1b. Newsflash. The average European Jew is 20% E1b1b, the same as the Bedouin Arabs, by the way. So again, that's another lie. They do have that DNA in them as well. And again, I will put the proof in the description box and the comments. So yes, European Jews most certainly do carry the Hamite marker of E1b1b through the sojourn of their ancestors in Egypt, and the fact that their ancestors lived among Canaanites for 2,000 years, whom, as we've already seen, looked exactly like modern Lebanese people. The irony here is that it is black Americans who have no genetic ties to the Levant corridor whatsoever. Zero. For example, black Americans who are overwhelmingly E1b1a carry virtually no E1b1b or J. Dalton the Dingbat claims that European Jews are actually the Edomites. The problem is that European Jews are 40% J and 20% E1b1b. And by the way, on a side note, they found the ancient remains of the leftover of the Edomites destroyed in Israel. Mr. Dalton apparently seems to have forgotten that the Israelites lived amongst the Edomites for 2,000 years. Josephus even records that the Jews actually forced the Edomites to be adopted into their ranks as Jews. This is from Josephus himself, which we all know, through forced conversion. Dalton the Dingbat will not explain how black Americans lived in the Levant for 2,000 years among the Canaanites and European Jews and yet carry neither of the primary haplogroups J or E1b1b. Not a word. Crickets. Point number 8. Another claim that Dalton the Dingbat makes is that European Jews cannot be Jews because they carry elements of various different paternal haplogroups. This just shows again how utterly uneducated this man is, though he claims to be. Of course the Jews are going to carry elements of various paternal groups. Why? Because Jews have been accepting Gentile converts for 4,000 years, which is scriptural, based on the Torah. I mean, this guy is a comedian. He's a total comedian. We see throughout scripture that the Jews have always been accepting Gentile converts. It's clear that Dalton the Dingbat has absolutely no idea what he's talking about, biblically, nor historically, nor when it comes to haplogroups. The fact of the matter is that it is expected that the Jews would carry elements of various different paternal haplogroups by virtue of the fact that they have been accepting converts for 4,000 years. Point number 9. Dalton the Dingbat is constantly lying to his audience. Again, he's making a lot of money off this. He's lying to his audience over and over again about E1b1a being a Semitic haplogroup. That's right, you heard me right. He's actually telling his people, his audience, that E1b1a is a Semitic haplogroup. This just shows right away that the buffoonery of this movement is just beyond belief. Again, this is a total fake claim and this takes 5 seconds to research. People of West African descent, including black Americans, are primarily Hamites who branched off from the line of Cush, the father of the black race, and eventually populated Central, South, and West Africa. That is a historical fact and a genetic fact. The Semitic languages fall under Afro-Asiatic language family, where Afro refers to North Africa, not Sub-Saharan Africa, nor West Africa. In fact, over 90% of Sub-Saharan African languages fall under Niger-Congo language. The primary haplogroup of people of West African descent, including black Americans, is E1b1a, period. While the primary haplogroup of Semitic people, meaning real Jews, and also Arabs, is J. Contrary to what this, again, this false teacher is saying E1b1a is not, I repeat, not a Semitic haplogroup whatsoever. And I'll post the links in the description box to show that as well. All right, here's an exact quote from the study that I'll be posting below. Using the principle of, again, the resolution of E1b1 in favor of the common ancestor of EM2 and EM29 strongly supports that the hypothesis that haplogroup E1b1 originates with Eastern Africa, as previously suggested, and the chromosomes EM2 so frequently observed in sub-Saharan Africa trace their descent to a common ancestor present in Eastern Africa. Notice the emphasis strongly supports, and the fact that the paper highlights how previous genetic studies already came to the same conclusion as well, over and over again. So it's over and over again, the proof that, again, they are of Cush, West African descent. Again, here's another point, the main point, the final point I'm going to say. Everyone has always known that West Africans are descended from the Cushites. Hence, all the maps from the 1700s as well refer to the coast of West Africa as the Ethiopian Sea. Aethiopin. Ethiopian Sea. The idea that West Africans are Cushites is not some invention by European colonists. In fact, all of the ancient writers knew that West Africans were Cushites. This was not a mystery. Hence, they all grouped sub-Saharan Africa as Ethiopia. Aethiopia. This will be in the description box as well. So again, Dalton the Dingbat acts as if the idea that people of West African descent are primarily Cushites is somehow crazy to him. I don't know why, when all of the early maps have the west coast of Africa as the Ethiopian Sea, and all of the ancient writers understood West Africans to be Cushites. They grouped sub-Saharan Africa as Ethiopia, like I said before. Furthermore, as I've shown, the primary haplogroup of West Africans, including Black Americans, traces its origins to, again, East Africa. Meanwhile, the primary haplogroups of real Jews and Bedouin Arabs, the J haplogroup, traces its origin back to the Levant. And if you look on a map, the Levant is where Israel is located. Shalom, thank you so much, and make sure you like, share, and subscribe today.